You are watching the New American Media. Galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Thank you very much for joining us today, Friday, September 14, 2012. My name is Brian Engelman. I am your host, and this is Agree to Disagree on the newamericanmedia.com. Thank you very much for listening to us as always. A couple reminders, if you are not yet following us on Twitter, we want you to get connected with us, so that you can send us great stories and we can send them out to the people following us. We're at American_media_. That's American_media_. And take a look at our Facebook page and like our page. We are at The New American Media. And please do us a favor and go ahead and click subscribe if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube. YouTube.com/The New American Media. A lot of stuff in the news. Obviously, you have the situation in the Middle East where Americans are being murdered/assassinated. That's a topic that is very complex, that is very complicated. But there's something else that's complicated. It's called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, specifically sections 1021 and 1022. We have a guest, Dan Johnson, who's going to join us here. And he's going to talk about some of the latest developments that have happened in the legal system regarding the Obama administration. And, you know, if regular American citizens could become targets or captured or kidnapped or detained without charges, without trial, indefinitely. President Obama signed this into law on New Year's Eve, and this is something that, well, in case of national emergency, maybe the U.S. government just has to take some extreme measures. It's a concept that has a lot of people very concerned right now, and we're going to bring in Dan, founder of PANDA, People Against NDAA, to talk to us a little bit about the latest updates regarding the NDAA.
Hello.
Hey, Dan, it's Brian with the New American Media's Agree to Disagree. You are live on the air. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty excellent. Yourself?
I'm living the dream, except for all of the turmoil in the world affairs that have the whole Middle East on fire, and we start thinking, well, what could suck us into World War III? And, well, in case of emergency, I wonder if there are any provisions out there that could infringe upon the civil liberties of Americans across the country. So that's obviously why we're bringing you in. So I'll just open the floor to you and allow you to introduce yourself, your company, the website, how they can get involved with what you're up to, and then we'll specifically talk about what happened in the court system regarding the NDAA this week.
All right. I'd like to start off real quickly with what I call a bad week for liberty. A quick recap over what's happened. While the Middle East is going on and all the news media is focusing elsewhere, the House passed FISA, or reauthorized FISA, so more warrantless wiretapping on Americans. And NDAA, I'll get into that later, as well as a 16-year-old young man was questioned by the FBI for supporting Ron Paul. So it's been an interesting week for liberty. But anyway, I'm Dan Johnson. I'm the founder of People Against the NDAA, otherwise known around the internet as PANDA. We are dedicated to fighting the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows for an American citizen or non-American citizen to be arrested, to be held indefinitely, to be not given a trial and not told why they're being held, and enforces the law of war on American soil. So we have about 70 chapters nationwide in over 30 states, and we have some great things. We're excited. We have the book/booklet coming out of the Ultimate Guide to Stopping NDAA, and that should be releasing here shortly. And we're very excited about the future of this movement, basically stopping that bill and nullifying it from a local level.
And tell everybody where they can connect with you, where your websites are, where your Twitter is, and every way that they can stay in touch.
Our website is pandaunite.org. That's pandaunite.org. Our Twitter is @pandaunite. YouTube is youtube.com/asecondopinion. And Facebook is facebook.com/asecondopinion. Those are the absolute best ways to connect with us. I'm also often on a couple different tiny chat rooms around, and we'll be launching one of those for P.A.N.D.A here shortly.
Well, let's go in a bit chronologically regarding your bad week for liberty. Let's talk about FISA real quick, because we can get into the NDAA. We'll talk about the Middle East. We'll talk about the 16-year-old and the Ron Paul connection, why he was questioned. But FISA, explain what FISA is.
Yeah, FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, pretty much. And what it allows and what it allowed before, this act has expired, is basically what has happened. And much like the Patriot Act expired, and they issued an extension of that, FISA expired, and they issued another extension of FISA. Now, FISA, much like the Patriot Act, allows for the warrantless wiretapping of American citizens without any kind of warrant. And I believe it is internationally based, FISA is. So...
Now, my understanding, Dan, is that in the United States of America, we have a Fourth Amendment, and that Fourth Amendment protects us against search and seizure, randomly being stopped and shaken by the ankles to see what falls out of the pockets, being prevented from having your horse and buggy, your carriage being stopped and rummaged through just because, or stopped from a roaming band of British troops who just wanted to barge into barns and homes and search around because, we heard something out there. We got a report that, ... So therefore, we're going to write this little piece of paper. We're going to write our own warrant, and now we've authorized ourselves to just dig into your life and see what you're up to. I thought we had a provision that prevents against that in the United States.
We do, or rather did, have the Fourth Amendment in effect in the United States. Recent actions have completely ignored and tossed that amendment to the side, but it does exist, and it has existed in our Constitution for a long time. Well, basically since the ratification of the Bill of Rights. But jumping right back to FISA, I had forgotten exactly what it does, but what it does is it allows the blanket snooping of emails and phone calls of Americans to suspicious sources and suspicious targets. As long as they are suspicious of you under FISA, they can snoop on your emails and snoop on your phone calls without a warrant.
Okay, let me back up then. Instead of trying to prove who may be suspicious, because that list could be very complicated. I know Department of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano, and all these people were sending out warnings of who may be potential terrorists if you may have served in the U.S. military, if you might talk about the Constitution, if you might have supported Ron Paul, if you might believe in limited government, if you might be prepping, if you might, basic common sense crazy talk. So let's do the opposite. Who would not be suspicious Yeah, let me just say that. Who would not be suspicious instead of trying to prove how you could be, because that list might never stop if you ask them to keep having their lawyers draft and put words out there that say how you could be suspicious. How would somebody not be suspicious in 2012 America?
Under the current requirements for being suspicious, you could not avoid being suspicious.
I know I'm asking you a very loaded question with no real good answer here, but it is funny to think about. Like, you know, I watched this great video. It's called Rap News, and it's number 15. Take a look on YouTube, Rap News 15. I know you saw it, but in it says, "Come on, guy, we're the government. You know that if you have nothing to hide, you got nothing to worry about." And then the response in this video is, well, yeah, that's fine and good right now while the laws that are being passed are mostly things that the citizens can mostly get behind. But what if this power were ever usurped and used for really bad things? That's why we have a constitution. That's why you're not allowed to do these types of things. So anybody could be suspicious. Anybody's phone could be tapped. Anybody's emails can be snooped through. Unless people like the ACLU or PANDA or the New American Media or listeners out there might have something contrary to say about it, what is the legal recourse? Can't we just take this to the Supreme Court and say, look, they're violating the Fourth Amendment? Clearly, you can't do that just because of an emergency. Fix it, right?
The Supreme Court, A, doesn't like to hear Fourth Amendment cases, and B, when the Supreme Court takes a Fourth Amendment case, for example, the case brought against the TSA. When the Supreme Court takes a Fourth Amendment case, they, especially recently, have sided in favor of the government. They sided in favor of the government in the TSA case, stating that the TSA is immune to the Fourth Amendment because they are protecting national security. The Supreme Court sided with the government in the case where a man accused of, I'm not sure, was it speeding or something of the sort, was strip searched at the jail. And he said that violated his Fourth Amendment rights. And the Supreme Court ruled that, no, you can be strip searched for anything. So the Supreme Court has had a very dismal record on civil liberties, especially the Fourth Amendment.
Okay, that's fantastic. So that's why passage of FISA this week was not good. I know we have a few other things we want to get to. NDAA, I want to talk about the Middle East going up in flames, supposedly over a movie. And I don't know if you saw this, but this was on The Onion. I love The Onion. It's a fantastic site. And it says, no one murdered because of this image. Now, I'm not going to go into great depiction of the filthy stuff I'm looking at on this cartoon here, but it shows four religious figures that are, well, like I said, I'm not even going to describe it. But, you know, when you talk about the Middle East, I think we have to define liberty as the concept of being allowed to be offended and making it illegal to use violence. I mean, I think that's pretty much at the core of what liberty is. But what I want to do, Dan, is I want to split this up into segments so that people can have bite-sized pieces to digest this information. So while we talked about FISA in the first segment, let me hit reset here, and we'll come back on Agree to Disagree here at thenewamericanmedia.com. And let's just get right into the meat of the NDAA. Let's talk about what happened this week legally, what the response was, and what the next steps are. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
All right, let me hit reset. We'll be right back in a sec.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on thenewamericanmedia.com.